Hey guys, one big thing this week was the Ohio State game already sold out in October. This was, Brad, you were saying a moment ago. I mean, this could be one if Illinois plays, if they get things done in September, that could be like a marquee top five matchup possibly at Memorial Stadium.
That would be just so exciting to have that happen. I mean, if they beat Indiana and Duke, and win the games they're supposed to win, they go into that game undefeated. Wow. I mean, you're talking about Ohio State, and Ohio State's ranked second, Illinois is ranked 12th, and Ohio State could be, who knows, they could be first by then or not, or they could be, fourth, fifth. But regardless, if Illinois wins all those games, people are going to be losing. They're going to climb that ladder. They'll be in the top 10 for sure. Look out. That could be just an epic game in Illinois football history. Now they'll probably lose like 52-0, but whatever. It'll be awesome before it. No, I'm just kidding. I think they'll compete with anybody there on their schedule. But yeah, this could be so much fun.
Well, the X factor is if there's a team that's had Ohio State's number over the years, it's been Illinois.
Yeah. Well, and maybe Michigan.
Yeah, but remember though, Illinois had a 5-year streak over them. I mean, there aren't very many teams that have a five-year winning streak over Ohio State ever. And Illinois comes up with the big win in 2007. When they hit, they hit. It would be a fantastic game to see that happen. But boy, that you still got to play Duke on the road. You got to play Indiana on the road, and then of course you have USC. There's really not many gimmies on this schedule.
No, there's not. They're going to earn their keep. But as Brad was saying, like he said, if you can win at Duke and get the win USC, Indiana, we'll know going into October kind of where this team is if they really have a legitimate shot. We saw one pundit actually had Illinois losing only one game in the regular season. That was the Ohio State game. So I guess it would be kind of a perfect scenario. We'll see what happens. On the Eye on the Illini podcast this week, Mike caught up with Coach Bielema. Great conversation. You can hear the entire bit on the podcast, but here's just a bit here. And talking about, again, Bielema, who, again, grew up in northwestern Illinois, kind of just outside the Quad Cities area, Prophetstown, talking about he remembers the great Illini days back in the 80s as a teenager. Let's listen into part of that.
You're a little younger than I am, but this brings me back to the 80s when Illinois meant big business and big trouble for opponents on either side of the street there with basketball and football. Is that an era that you look back on fondly now that you're at Illinois?
Yeah, I was born in 70, so the 80s were my my teen years, and was heavily affected by what went on down here. I was actually really a big-time Illinois basketball fan, to be quite honest. Grew up in the northwest corner, so there's some players from that era. It's funny, as this whole thing's played out, I came here and met a million people, right? But I remember the first basketball game I went to, I met Doug Altenberger, and I was just like, holy cow, like this.
Yeah. Same way I feel today, or felt when I interviewed him. You got a chance to meet these guys. Well, I tell you, I had a few questions for you. One thing we've learned about you as a coach, watching you over the last 5 years, is you don't do anything that's random. You seem to be pretty intentional in your actions. And so when I watch this press tour, and most coaches want to see the press about as much as they want to see a positive COVID test, you seem to be having a lot of fun. What was the motivation to go out there and talk to the press?
Well, a couple things, right? Brett Moore, who obviously handles all this stuff for me, he really had an interesting perspective, right? Like we knew in the media, we were going to have the national media days, right, for the Big Ten Conference, but just had so many players that were garnering some national awards and recognition. So, came up with the idea of taking the O-linemen up to Chicago, right? We took all of our the guys that couldn't make Chicago down to St. Louis, opened up some windows of opportunity there. For me as a head coach, listen, it's all about being able to expose our program to as many voices and people that normally wouldn't have that moment, right? And, for us, recruiting is a huge side effect of some of this stuff, right? And I would just tell you, like, I went on a couple podcasts, right? And the amount of reaction I got from people that, I have contacts with, whether it be a high school player, high school coach, a former player, really guys from 20, 30 years ago that I coached even before I became a head coach, reached out to me. So exposure is a really big deal, right? And social media is a huge aspect of that.
Yeah, and you look, like I said, you're having so much fun doing it, which is, we're just not used to seeing that from coaches. So that was really refreshing. When you're looking at a team like this year with a lot of experience back, high expectations from the fan base. Do you go through your goal setting for yourself and your staff and your team? Do you do that any differently? Or is that a process that you use that is just a process that is unaffected by those things?
I get the question, but really I'm pretty, you made reference earlier, right? Like everything I do kind of is planned out or detailed, whatever that word is or phrase. I think if you had my wife on this Zoom, she would probably have another phrase for it, right? Like just kind of like, I kind of get locked into what I do, how I do things, going into year one where we ended up the season being 3-9 versus the next year when we're 8-5 and the next year to be 5-7 and last year to be 10-3. Every year going into it, I like to think I do the same. Now I do the same things, but there are going to be modifications. Like today, case in point, we've gone 4 pretty hard days here in the last 5 that have been good, physical. We've taken steps forward every day. So today I'm kind of lightening the physical load, but heavy on the mental load. We'll work end of half. We'll work some very specific in-game situations today that, even though we don't stress them physically, we're going to really stress them mentally. And there's a process I go through that. I have a working checklist that I go through. But really, goal setting, one of the things I learned, and I actually learned this from Barry Alvarez when I went to Wisconsin. It's something I adopted after I was with him. We let the players make the season goals, right? So I'll sit in front of the room. They'll start rattling them off. We'll probably have 20, 25 goals, and then we'll narrow it down to about, 10 or 12. I'll kind of be a part of that. And then I'll narrow it down to what I propose to them out of their voices into a group of 3, 4, 5, maybe at max. And then I'll let the leadership council kind of tweak it to say it how they want to say it. Sometimes our guys say things in ways that I'm not cued into, right? So little catchphrases and slogans that mean something to them, because I kind of partner that with, I learned that through Barry, but I also learned when I was with Coach Belichick, he had a phrase one time. He was talking to media and somebody asked him about expectations. And he said, listen, I have high expectations, but I really hope our players are even higher. And that really made a lot of sense to me, right? I can want certain things as a head coach, but really what drives this car in the right direction is our players. And that's something we definitely take advantage of.
Well, now people who are listening are going to think that I cued you in because you've led into my next question. We're all the sum of the experiences that we bring to the table. And I don't know if people realize just how many fantastic coaches that you've worked for as you developed over the years. Hayden Fry, Kirk Ferentz, Bill Snyder, Barry Alvarez, Bill Belichick. I was wondering, was there a piece of like gold from a knowledge standpoint that you got from each coach? And I just wondered like what that might be, just because again, most people haven't had the ability to work for such talented coaches throughout their career.
To be honest, Mike, I realized it kind of really when I got my first head coaching job. When I look back on it, all of those guys you mentioned were a big part of my life, especially when I was going through it. But I have remained close to all of those guys. Unfortunately, Hayden's no longer with us, but up until he passed, I remember as it kind of got down to the end, I knew he wasn't going to be with us that much longer. So I was actually out in Vegas and hopped in a car about an hour and a half drive out and went to his little resort where he had kind of retired to, just about an hour and a half outside of Vegas, and spent an afternoon with him and his wife. Just very appreciative that I got that day with him, because I never got a chance to see him again. So that was the one common denominator, So I went from Coach Fry, obviously Kirk came in and had that direct relationship, but then I went to work for Bill Snyder and Barry Alvarez. All of those guys worked for Hayden on the same staff.
Oh,
so
wow.
All of them were a part of that history that I think has a huge factor into all of this, but all of them very uniquely different. Coach Fry was a very genuine players coach. He really didn't talk to us a lot on defense. He may come down and tell us, to strip the ball or make a tackle, but he didn't give many schematic advices. But then I went to work for Kirk, who was an unbelievable head coach who transitioned to legend, right, from Hayden Fry to him.
Yeah.
So when I took over for Barry Alvarez, I drew a lot from what Kirk taught me right along the way. And then I went to Bill Snyder, who is completely different than all of them, right? But he was a leave no stone unturned, right? And then if you do, turn it over again, because he's always going to find a way to find something different than the other guy had. And then full circle to Barry Alvarez, who literally when Coach walked in the room, everybody knew who he was. Whether you didn't know who Barry Alvarez, somebody important just walked in the room, and the confidence he carried was pretty awesome. And then all 4 of those guys, first ballot Hall of Famers in college football Hall of Fame for sure. But and to go to work for Coach Belichick, who's absolutely, the 2 years I was with him were worth just an incredible amount of knowledge, perspective, understanding, a simplistic way to look at things by also making it a little complex. So, yeah, I've taken a lot from every one of them.
Yeah, that's I was always curious because anybody gets a chance to work under Belichick, if you're absorbing things, I would look like he would be a guy that would leave you the better for it.
Yeah, he's a pretty special dude. He always, he has a perspective that the outside world sees him through the media, right? But on a personal level, I remember literally the first month we were there, he came up. I like to bet horses. He knows I like horses, so no other betting, just horses, which is totally legal. I love the Derby. I love the Preakness. All of them. So he literally comes up, and my wife, we had had our second child we were expecting, so my wife was not with me in New England when I first got there, and so he's like, "Hey, would you and Jen want to go to the Derby with us this weekend? I'm taking a plane." I'm like, "Absolutely, right?" And Jen couldn't join us just where she was at with the pregnancy and everything, so I hopped on the plane with Coach and really saw a side of him then that I'd never seen before too, right? Just a guy enjoying what he does. And then our horse that we were there to see together, we both commonly knew one of the owners. That thing went on to win the Triple Crown, Justify, and we went to every race that year, so it was really kind of a cool moment to see him on a side other than football, but his football knowledge, IQ awareness is as high a level as I've ever seen.
All right, Bret Bielema. Once again, you can hear that entire interview on the Eye on the Illini podcast. You can download those anywhere you get your podcast. Brad, once again, there's just a joy in his voice talking with Mike that I didn't really hear in years past. It feels like right now he's having fun. I think he knows he has something special here like he had in some previous years in other places.
Well, I'm sure it's just because he was so excited to talk to Mike. But
that's how I looked at it.
But yeah, I mean, I figure that's it. But there also could be the fact that he feels like his football team's pretty good, and he's got his program in a good place. You're ranked preseason number 12. I mean, and what I like about it is we're Illinois backers. We're around the Illini. We're around the team. We want to see him do well, just because we know him. We're fans, whatever. But at the same time, you have national guys talking about Illinois being a college football playoff. It's not just us, it's not just fanboys. It's the national guys talking about it. Now that's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's got to be a sense of pride because we know how bad Illinois was before Bret Bielema got here. And you really, you look at what Lou Henson took over and turned around a program, and you look what Mike White took over and turned around a program. Bret Bielema is going to be able to stand with those type of guys. I think he's going to have more sustained success though than Mike White ever had. So it's a heck of a job well done. But yet for him, I think Bielema looks at it as the job's just beginning now that they're at a higher level.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's exactly where he is, what he's looking at right now. Someone on the IlliniGuys.com message board asked, when was the last time Illinois had back-to-back winning seasons in conference? And I believe the answer is 1992 and 93. The Lou Tepper years, who, of course, followed John Malkovich. I mean, it has been a very long time since that's happened. But as Bielema said, again, last year. No one's going to give anything to you. They got to go out and earn it. But, boy, it's a lot of fun to see what this team could be. And, again, if they can just sustain this, because we know, again, Illinois programs, they don't do well in back-to-back seasons. I don't know what it is, the bounce back, something about, I don't know, the swamp underneath the stadium. I don't know. It's something, but maybe this year it changes. Okay, quick timeout and some final thoughts here on the show, right here on the Sports Spectacular on the Illini Guys Radio Network.